There'd be a great opportunity for you and I to catch up. Just really want to touch base, see what you're up to, and see how things are going at the moment.
Yeah, great, thank you. And I guess as I saw you in November, you probably know I was just on the cusp of a career a move, and it has been tough, And I know we're going to go through the interview training shortly, but for me it's been the perfect storm. You've had Brexit, you've had elections, you've had flooding, and unfortunately COVID. I mean, yeah. What's your thoughts on that, Mike?
I think it's. I've lived through downturns, recessions previously. I think the impact of this is far greater, reaches farther than anything that I've lived through in my lifetime. And I think one of the things that I'm hearing from clients and from HR professionals is that I think fall into two very distinct camps. Those that are taking a longer term view in terms of recognizing that to go through a senior level recruitment process can take 3-6 months by the time somebody served the notice, and some clients still pressing ahead with recruitment activities, and whilst others are looking at particularly in some sectors within the food industry, very much short-term in protecting their business and trying to protect their position in the marketplace at the moment.
It's a really interesting point just about what they are doing. I mean, I've connected with quite a few marketers and product managers over the last few weeks, and what I've heard, there is massive, obviously, chaos. There's that emotional piece where certainly the kind of directors are putting first and foremost their people. So it's managing that piece. I think on then the basics of marketing is this access point, if you like, of making sure you're kind of authentic and true and real to your brand, and you go to market with a kind of signature that people say, hey, this is a brand that has good meaning, so kind of a sense of purpose. And the other thing that I'm seeing and hearing is how they're looking at their budgeting, and that's a massive topic. And I remember years ago in 2008, how we looked at our campaigning, and we kept on going. And the reason for that is, although we took a little bit of the tactical activity out, but certainly in terms of brand awareness, you're still at the forefront of consumers, both on digital or other platforms. And what we drove at the time was awareness of what we do. And we built, if you like, within a pie of spend that was out there, we actually had a bigger share. So when we came out of the recession, we definitely went in faster into activity and growing the brand. So really, really strong and important.
So based on what you're saying there, and from your experience, do you think companies and brands should still be marketing at the moment?
Absolutely, yeah. For me, and I guess it depends upon the industry too. So some are, in that, I would say, a defensive position and looking after their people. And I think some structures, you think of tourism, flights, etc. In those particular areas, I think there's different things you have to do with your brand and different ways to look at your brand spend. But I think first and foremost, you think of food and beverage, where obviously I've spent a lot of my time. There's certainly an opportunity there. Shopping habits have changed. People are not, going to the restaurants. They're buying online a lot, etc. And they're not obviously visiting stores as much, although we're coming out of that. But there's certainly a resonance there to keep your brand, aware, in touch with the consumer, etc. Yeah, absolutely.
And I think there's, again, one of the things that I see. I mean, there are within the sort of food and manufacturing, food ingredient sector, some distinct variances in terms of what organisations are doing at the moment. I think the food service industry has ground to a halt, non-existent. And one of the things that I'm seeing there, organisations are starting to be a little more innovative in terms of what do they do with their businesses? Do they just stop, or do they do something else? One business in particular I know has been very innovative and launched a direct-to-consumer business very, very quickly. But I'm seeing within the food manufacturing and food ingredients sector, those organizations are working incredibly hard to keep the supply chain going. Yes, there are logistical challenges that they're facing, but the supply chain seems to be, I think, overall pretty robust. And I think a lot of organizations have coped incredibly well with the increased demand in certain areas of the food sector.
The other thing I want to talk to you about is what opportunities there are in the kind of interim world and support world. I mean, again, I know from experience, when times are, we say, quieter, but when there are times where you're just changing the way you're doing things, there is good ways to keep people positively busy.
Sure.
And I've got two examples, one good and one bad recently. One where the teams are being trained every day and have to attend training to build their knowledge. Well, what's that going to do in terms of other things and day to day and dealing with customers? And then on the flip side, teams that are thinking about, well, what can we do to kind of dust down and look at our housekeeping? So for example, in the marketing world, you look at your market mapping or things related, if you like, to key aspects of potentially what will come out of the market. A great one I heard was a friend of mine who, in the selling team, was actually, unfortunately, but talking about how they plan for the exit, how they plan for likely customers that are going to have challenges that could actually go out of business. How does that affect them? How do they then look at future levels of growth and future levels of opportunity? So, lots of things that can be done proactively now.
I think there's one of the things, the feedback I'm having is people have more time to take a look at the longer term view in terms of not just, okay, this is what we've been doing for the last 6 months, it's been working. Well, actually, beyond this, we might need to be doing something different. But people having time to look at market mapping, customer segments, new potential customers, ways that they can steer their business out of this. And I gave you the example earlier of the food service business, who's been quite innovative. And I think people are having, from a housekeeping point of view, more time to do these things. I know it's one of the things that I've done in my business is look at, okay, what is my core offering? And my core offering is what it is, and it will remain the same. But beyond that, what can I do to position myself in the market 3 months down the line when we come out of this? Because I think one of the things you're going to find is there inevitably are going to be more people on the market, more candidates looking for jobs. So that, how does then a candidate differentiate themselves from somebody else? And one of the things that we've introduced, we talked about last time we spoke, was the executive CV writing service and LinkedIn profile optimization, because people are going to need to stand out and differentiate themselves from other people on the market. So what we're looking at doing is, okay, we'll continue to do what we do, but what else, what other value-added services can we bolt on, either through partnerships or joint ventures, that are going to give some real value to people in the market right now? And I think other organizations are doing the same. It's, okay, what else can we do? With our core product offering, what else can we bolt on? How can we slightly differentiate ourselves from other players in the market? And I think that's one of the things that's happening consistently at the moment.
Yeah, a good point. And for me, looking out now, what would you say, as I get into that area of consulting and interim work, how, and we're going to do, as I said, some of the interviews now, but how do you see me looking at that in the future? What things should I be thinking of differently? You know me well enough in terms of my skill set.
Yeah, sure.
What should I be amplifying, etc.?
I think we've known each other long enough. I can be quite open with you. I think in terms of what you've done in your career and some of your deliverables, that's what people are going to buy. They're not going to buy the fact that you've got 20 years marketing experience, because so many other people. What they'll buy is the fact that what have you delivered where you've been previously in terms of tangible results, in terms of opening up new markets, bringing new products to market. And that's where the value is, and that's what I think people going forward. I mean, it's always happened to a certain extent, but more so now, people will be looking at senior level in terms of, if we're going to pay X to bring somebody in to do this job for us, and whether that's on a full-time or on an interim basis, what are we going to get back from that? What's the return in our investment? And I think particularly on the interim contract side of things, someone's going to bring an interim in for 3 or 6 months to manage a project, whether that's a product launch or new route to market. They're going to be looking for tangible evidence of where someone has done that previously. And if you've done it previously, then the likelihood is you could do it again.
Yeah.
So it's really that focus on deliverables, achievements, and key result areas, yeah?
And I'm thinking too, whilst my CV is chronological and talks about the things I've done, in this interim piece, I'm looking at key, I guess, projects, because most of the work that everybody does, certainly in the marketing world, is project led.
Sure.
To kind of cluster that and associate that with either the type of business or the type of opportunity. Is that how I should look at that?
I think so. I think people tend to have quite when looking at CVs, people will glance at them. And if there's nothing that hits them immediately, they won't take the time to read through that. So I think if you can pull out your achievements, and that's at the very opening, at the top piece of your CV. This is what I've done. This is what I've delivered. This is what I'm capable of doing. And that strikes a chord with somebody, then they're likely to read a little bit further. And if there isn't that initial impact there, no matter how good you are, you might get missed.
Yeah. And then anything else engaging with, because you said that you're mainly on permanent roles, but you're looking at this interim. How should I do that too, Mike? I mean, I know you are a good buddy, but I'll be looking at other consultants too. How should I do that?
I mean, the interim work that we're involved with has been very much driven by the existing client relationships that we've got, and we're seeing I think we saw it last year with the uncertainty around Brexit. People didn't want to bring somebody in on a full-time basis because if the economic environment suddenly changed, they might not want to keep them full-time. So last year there was an increase in the number of interims are out there on initial 3-month contracts, which then rolled on for 6 months, 12 months, and some of them still going now. And I think from your point of view, in terms of tapping into that market, is utilising people like myself, people who are, and there are organisations out there who are specialist interim recruitment agencies, and is building that relationship with them, but also in terms of utilising your own network, as it were, and your own contacts, because people would know you or potentially know you as someone who's a full-time marketing director. They might not know that you're now looking at consultancy or interim work. So it's a case of keeping the market abreast of where you are, and your contacts abreast of where you are as well.
Okay, thanks, Mike. Excellent. Any other tips before we get deep in?
I don't think so. I think it's a case of keeping yourself visible in the markets. As I'm doing. I mean, I'm having conversations with people every day of the week. It's not with a view that they're going to be recruiting today. Some of them are, but the majority of people are saying, well, maybe 3 months' time, with a view just to maintaining that relationship. Being visible in the market, being visible with people and trying to keep abreast of whatever changes are happening, and also keeping current with what's happening, as I know you are, with the trends and what's happening within the marketing industry generally.
Yeah, that's a good point. And even on the trends, I've been able to, there are the webinars rather that talk about those trends. And I come back to the point, I think, identifying with companies that you feel strongest aligned with is for me the way to go. And again, I'm kind of extrovert in here, but I wouldn't want to go too far off a tangent. Perhaps even in the interim role, or would you say that that's not necessarily an issue? It's about how you apply your trade.
I think in the interim world, I think you get to a certain level where the skills you had, as you already demonstrated, transferable from one industry to another. I think individuals would take potentially a different view on an interim role possibly from a sector point of view, as they would from a full-time role. There's no right or wrong answer there. And I think if the content of the role is something that interests you and it's a sector that you feel comfortable operating in, then why not?